Hello, Bill.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I cannot see you.
Yeah, I'm in the world's slowest Apple device ever manufactured.
A Apple II?
MacBook Air slash space shuttle engine fan noises.
Wow.
So
I
this was manufactured pre-Zoom.
was just reading a really fascinating article from Joel Podolny about Apple University and how Apple's functional leadership style was organized. And the interesting thing is the main phrase he used was that instead of having managers leading managers, you have experts leading experts. I thought that was an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean everything goes well, but it means that the people who have the most direct expertise get to make the decisions and decide which risks to take. And arguably that accounts for both the strengths and weaknesses of many of Apple's decisions.
Well, my impression from Apple in terms of experts is like in terms of hiring. I'm clicking start video and it's not working. Maybe I'll restart, but like they don't hire college kids. They only hire experts, domain experts these days. So that expert mentality might be rampant.
Right. I mean, they had a pretty aggressive intern program back in
wait. Pretty aggressive intern. Talk to someone at Google.
Okay. Yeah.
They're wined and dined every night. My son was an internship at another company, $5,000 travel allowance for 2.5 months.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
of course, Apple is almost, but that's almost part of but that actually reinforces the idea that they want people who are obsessed about working on certain hard problems, in a very much narrower way than Google. Like Google is obsessed over finding smart people. Apple doesn't really worry about being smart. Like it's funny, when I was at Apple, the question of how smart anyone was never seemed to come up.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah. But anyway,
I'm going to try my cell phone. We'll give up on this laptop. So I'll rejoin here with cell phone and you'll see two bills.
All right. Then, looking forward to Bill 2.0.
Yes, old Bill will hang up.
Hey.
See, two bills. Welcome. Okay, so audio.
Two audios.
Echoes.
All right.
There we go.
Are you down to one personality now?
Yes.
All right.
We'll see how it goes.
It happened to me yesterday on a Zoom call. The person was zoomed in on one device, but had his audio on a second one, and he didn't link the audio, so it was somewhat disconcerting.
Wow.
But I was just thinking about actually the one thing, and maybe this is very random, but we're talking about forming the body of Christ between us.
Right.
And one of the interesting things about Apple is that because it's all functional, there is no subgroup that is autonomous. And it made me think about how the church, it's all these little autonomous subunits.
Right.
Like, the youth group has a preacher and a worship team and an event. And like, they're all sort of reproduced. And it made me think, like, what if the church was organized like Apple, where you had like the worship, imagine a mega church. It's easier to think of it that scale. It's like there was the worship ministry, there was the event organizing team, there was the teaching team, and that was their primary guild, where they're really focused on honing their craft and getting better at it. And then they would have these cross-functional products that they would occasionally, spontaneously organize around. It's like, okay, how do we create an event for this community? How do we create learning for these communities? And it's funny, I was reading this book of Eric's about John Zizulus, I can never pronounce it.
Yes, right.
Right? About how the church should come together in the Eucharistic community because it includes all the different people in that locality, and everything else is not really church. because it's too narrow and sliced up. And there was that sense, it felt like there was a common theme there somewhere that in order to be the body of Christ, we have to come together in a certain kind of way. It's not the only way that we're organized, but it's the only thing that really counts. And I don't know, it might not be relevant for anything, but it just struck me.
Yeah. Well, like I was talking to my friend who's putting together what's called a Blue Christmas for people who are hurting during Christmas.
Oh.
Well, no, it's a good idea.
No.
Yeah.
It's a powerfully sweet idea and has an Elvis illusion thrown in there.
That type of yes, okay.
Yeah.
And so she and her friend were browsing on Google to find some useful stuff, and it was like terrible. It's like, oh, you should just cheer up, and this is a good time for you to put on the happy face and show people.
Really? Wow.
Whatever, right? And so after throwing up, she decided to write her own liturgy. So it's 4 candles.
Wow.
And the first candle is to remember people we've either lost or lost because we can't be with them through COVID restrictions. And so you just, the 4 candles get repurposed like that. Last candle is hope. But I said, and then she said, well, what do you think? And I said, it doesn't really matter what you say. It's just the fact that you're having the event is 99% of the value.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as you avoid, I mean, I think they have the event and that you are validating people's feelings.
Yeah, but I mean,
as opposed to like.
No, but I think, well, like, I guess what I'm saying is you could Quaker it. Just the fact that you recognize there's a need for this event is a
right. As long as you're holding the event, you're not holding it to try and fix people. You're holding it to try to be present with them.
Well, you're recognizing the need. So just saying we're going to have this alternative event is 99%.
I can imagine someone recognizing the need and doing it wrong.
Right. That's what I'm saying. The Quaker might be the safer approach.
Yeah, the safer. Yeah, it's weird. Like the less managed it is, the more real it might be.
Yeah, or maybe it's a spin on, I guess it's attributed to St. Francis, preach the gospel if you have to use words, but
right, yeah, because sometimes you do have, because like one could imagine. In fact, this is kind of the issue I was arguing about with Dave last call, was that like on the one hand, I really like the idea of organic, emergent, spontaneous gatherings, but then what if somebody takes control and steers it in the opposite direction? Then is it appropriate to intervene to make sure that they don't ruin it for everyone else, or did you just equate that as being spontaneous?
What do you mean by opposite direction? They try and put a structure on it?
Yeah, they try to impose, like say you're doing your spontaneous Quaker meeting, and then somebody says, oh, you shouldn't feel that way, you should be happy. Right? And they start lecturing in there. It's like,
well, lecturing is probably the main problem. I mean, you can have dialogues. And
right, you're right. If people question, it's one thing, but if someone like, I mean, this was the incident that happened with you in season 5 that David and I were still arguing about a bit, was that like, David as moderator kind of jumped on you and wanted you to talk about certain things, and it's like, and I realize I'm still conflicted about how I handled it, and I'm still processing that, and we may end up revisiting that on Tuesday. Is it good to let, like, if people talk about what they want to talk about, but if what they want to talk about is what somebody doesn't want to talk about, how do you make that call? And it's hard. I think what I've come down to is that you have to make a call based on your position and information at the time, but just embrace the fact that even if it's the best call you could make and the right call, that there's a cost to it, and you have to go back and pay that cost.
Yeah, this person on one of my Zoom calls says, every time you speak, you die a little bit. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, that's perhaps the ultimate.
But every time you want to speak and keep silent, you also die a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you communicate a lot through silence, as Bill well knows.
Yes, you've been very effective at communicating through silence, not so much the other parts. I wanted to catch up with you and see how you are doing and how you're feeling about life and the group and relationships, and if you caught up on any of the stuff that's happened.
Yeah, I listened to the last Zoom, and then just after you spoke with our new friend, I spoke with our new friend
Hmm.
and was trying to assess. So, what do you think? And so, my question just about that issue is, I guess I was perhaps incorrectly wondering if the model for TGR is have a fight, but then forgive and make up, and that's a great witness. And I'm not, it's either a misperception of the model moving forward, or if that is the model that everyone's really happy and excited about, I'm not happy and excited about that model.
So I wish I knew, Bill, is the short answer,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so the thing that I would hope you get excited about is this idea of we need to form Christ between us. That was kind of the
Yeah,
takeaway I
yeah.
got from
Yeah,
your.
I'm just reading an article, review of. So one of my groups reading Jack Caputo,
Mhm.
who just came out a brand new book, which we're not reading. We're reading his older book called The Folly of God, his easiest book. But and then the review says it's very much like, why am I slightly happy? A rare event these days. Just in the middle of the review, he said, so Caputo is talking about theology. Well, you don't want to start with theology. You should start with, the human feelings and human emotions, the effect, right? Effective psychology, and then build your theology around that. And then, can I find this? And then it's saying actually, and it works even better if these feelings are collective, not individual. It's like, wow. So same thing.
What was that again? Just I should take some notes.
The feeling. Well, I got to bring up the quote here on my slow laptop. The quote is, okay. The best interests of theology are to, this is the Caputo thing he's quoting, the best interests of theology, perhaps TGR, are to be found deep down in the depths of our experience. And this claim, now then the reviewer says, this claim could be mistaken for a return to romanticism, to a God of emotion, feeling subjectivity. However, is a simple reversal of the metaphor. God is not to be found in the heights, but in the depths. And the experience he's talking about is not individual, but collective. The more of us whose experience is recognized, the deeper we go. So I think I would tie that to the Christ form between us idea.
Right. So here's, and this is, if we can pull this off, that would be something. So I feel like what I want is the same thing as you want. Okay. And I think it is the same thing the Great Reset needs. Okay. And so what I'm trying to figure out is how do we operationalize that? Right. Because if I just say, let's just sit down and do this and leave it wide open, people will revert back to their familiar forms.
For this call, do we want this to be the forming Christ between us?
Sure. Unless you have a better formulation.
No, it seems like that's something we violently agree upon as a useful thing to explore.
Mm-hmm.
Until proven otherwise.
Yeah, and I don't see that as inconsistent with loving more like Jesus, although it has different nuance and emphasis. I feel like if we did one, we would accomplish the other.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a little bit hard because, well, I guess we could approach it this way. So it seems a little bit tricky to say, how did Jesus form Jesus between himself and others? And maybe there's an answer there, but he is kind of Jesus. Doesn't seem like he needs to form Jesus.
It's interesting, right? Because you see right. I mean, the Zuzulist perspective, which I think is relatively conventional, though not talked about a lot, is that Jesus was on earth, he had a physical body that his spirit animated, and that, but he had to learn how to train it and for it to grow up to be functioning just like every other human body does from birth. He had to learn how to, eat and see and walk and run and all these sorts of things. And so in the same way, we are the body of Christ held together by his spirit, somewhat immature and dysfunctional, but he is trying really hard. He is trying to train us to function as his body through his spirit. And so that's kind of the which makes it interesting to look at Jesus's emotional reactions and his conflicts to see, maybe there's some
Right.
clue there. But anyway, I'm jumping ahead where you might be going.
No, I like that, the training part. And so like one point of discussion would be, I don't want to say which is more important, but there's sort of two things he did, sort of. You could say he did miracles, which you could say, oh, those are very individualistic things. You just watch him work, versus his interactions with people. But if you think about it, most of the miracles were actually relating with people.
Right. I thought you were going to say miracles and teaching, which is what most people focus on. But,
Or teaching could be the third, but obviously miracles are a type of teaching, and interacting with people is a type of teaching.
Yeah, so you can frame it different ways.
Right.
What's interesting, if you think about it with this lens, is that in some ways, what Jesus did was precursors to forming his body, as well as demonstrations of what a functional body would look like.
Yeah.
And
good.
so the
but
goal is not to do miracles. The goal is to become the kind of body of Christ that can do miracles, which is a subtle distinction, but I think an important one.
Yeah, the miracles are expressed in a different way, but like loving enemies, which he did.
Yeah, I mean, and there's different ways he relates. Here's the, actually, let me press into this, because if this is true, it would really actually make a lot of other things make sense.
Go ahead.
Like, one of the things that is frustrating is when I feel like somebody is obsessing over some narrow thing, like just it's all about the miracles, or it's all about the teaching, or even it's all just about being the body. And it's like, no.
Or dare we say all about discipleship? Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's about being the body of Christ, connecting to the head in a way that does all these things. And
yeah, I mean, it's easier to say, what doesn't it include? What aspect of life doesn't it include? That's a very short list, perhaps empty.
Let me write that down, because I thought that, at least for me.
Because Christians like to say Christianity is these 3 or 4 things. And it's like, wow, that's ultra reductionist. It's like saying the key to Apple is these three things.
Right. And what's interesting, like going back to that earlier part of the article, when that is helpful is when you can diagnose why things aren't happening a certain way. Like, I thought the Apple article was good. It didn't say like every company should do this, but it did say, if you're in a context where you're on the bleeding edge of technology, where you need to have a deep understanding of what it is or is not possible in order to take the appropriate risks, then you need to have groups that are led by experts rather than led by managers. And I thought that was a good design pattern.
Wait, this sounds vaguely familiar of Elon Musk's rant on Twitter this week.
Oh, I'm blissfully unaware of most of these things.
Go check it out. He said, the world's problem is we have way too many companies run by MBAs. And he wasn't targeting MBAs in particular. He's saying the way forward is companies really have to focus on good products and good solutions, less on the financial blah, 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 and scheduling, all that kind of management stuff. And he just used MBA as a representative of that.
Yeah. And, I've had my issues with MBAs, and I've matured to the point where I actually realized there was a lot of great value in it. But it is telling that
but you're not the second richest guy in the world, so who cares?
Yeah, but I realized that MBAs teach people to be good managers, but that is a different thing than being a good leader. And if
I think he's just saying the pyramid is upside down.
Yeah, well, I love the Angela Ahrendts view. Is you put the crazy young kids on top, and then you put the seasoned veterans in the middle management layer, where they can make sure that things get done and they can ask the important questions. But the energy and the decision is focused on the problem. Oh, this is great. Maybe this is how you avoid the iron law of bureaucracy. Cornell's, right? We discussed it, haven't we? That in every
No.
organization, there's two kinds of people: those who obsess over the mission, and those who obsess over the organization.
Yes, we
And what
talked about
happens is
that.
the people in charge of the organization end up in, the people who care about the organization above the mission end up in charge.
Right.
And
We talked about that. Yeah.
so, this is the hard design pattern.
I mean,
that,
in some sense, aren't you describing like the typical incubator that exists here?
sorry, the Angela
Incubator, especially like
Hmm.
the one at Berkeley. I can't remember its name. The Star Incubator. It's just young university students.
So it's close, right? In that you're right, and that's fascinating because an incubator or a platform,
Or the Possibility Project that Brandon was involved with at the Enlightened Church in Palo Alto, right?
I'm
The
not familiar with
Sacred.
the details on that. I mean,
Yeah, they sold the building in Sunnyvale,
Mhm.
gave half the money to
right,
other
yeah.
churches. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
but
thing
then,
is, so there's two things. So one, I think that's half of it, right? Where there's a sense in which the older are serving the younger to do new things, right? The problem is that it's not as aggressive as the Angela Ahrendts thing, because the older people are still in charge. The just young people just be in charge of something new. Angela Ahrendts is more radical, where you put the young people sort of in charge of telling the older people what to do.
Mhm.
And there's a, but it helps to think about the MBA and the iron law bureaucracy is that, well, the reason that the people who care about the organization charge the organization, because the people who don't care about the organization, who only care about the mission, A, don't want to spend the time worrying about the organization, and B, will gladly act in ways that destroy the organization and then undercut their ability to function.
Yeah, and then the other place we see this is in the classic Silicon Valley startup life cycle. Is you get the kids from Stanford, Sergey and Larry, and then you bring in quote unquote adult supervision to do the stabilization phase, and then the company just goes sideways for decades as a cash cow.
Yeah, and this is the thing that is oh boy, this is good, because this is exactly where the personal pain point is between me and David. Is I feel like David is like this guy who is focused on the mission and is full of energy and passion around certain things, literally to a fault.
David Johnson?
David Johnson, yes, our David.
Oh, I thought he was more the managerial. Oh, go ahead. This is interesting. A perilous conversation I
At
had.
least the way our relationship is a dynamic. I mean, it can go either way, but the tension I feel is precisely like, I feel like he's got this passion, which is really important. But I also, from my perspective, is that it's immature. And that if I just turned him loose to just do whatever he felt like doing, as he himself said, that I guess he says he's destroyed things in his effort to prove a point, that it could, at least in theory, destroy the organization. Especially because he's more concerned about his vision than he is about the organization, right? And that's not an
by the way, let's say typical millennial. Ha ha ha. I mean, they're so right. They're known to be completely this. Didn't I tell you that the icebreaker? I was doing small groups. I learned one icebreaker was like, you can't ask a millennial, what's your ideal company to work for? That's a totally unrelatable question. The question is, what world problem do you want to solve?
Yeah, and this is precisely the point: is that okay, what organizational structure do you need to be part of in order to solve that problem? Because you can't just solve it with good intentions and hard work.
Maybe we're sort of debating form follows function at this point, huh?
Well, I think the issue is that form should follow function, but not too far behind or too close, right? Form should gently follow function, but it still has to follow. And then function has to
look at this. Look at this young guy, Jesus, when he was 31, 32. He went into the corporate structure, the temple, and spoke his piece by enacting in pretty strident ways with tables and doves and things.
Right. And, but, let's give the devil his due here. He said, destroy this temple in 3 days, I'll rebuild it. And, while his physical body was resurrected, in some ways, we are still waiting to replace what he tore down.
Yeah.
And so I felt like he was authentic and he did, and he paid the price for what he did. And he is paying the price for our slowness in doing it. And this is the hard thing, is that you can't have no form. And form needs to be subordinate to mission. Ooh, this is starting, okay, this is getting oddly, awkwardly close to marriage and,
Right.
roles versus equality and all sorts of awkward stuff.
Right.
But I think the big thing for me is, actually, I don't know what the big thing for me is that Christ is the head, right? And this is one of the points that, I made to David Johnson, which he caught him by surprise, but he acknowledged the validity of it, is that I don't think I am the head of the Great Reset. If anything, I'm the steward. Like, I feel like I'm really trying to make Jesus the head, and I'm just trying to be the steward. And I don't think I've articulated that well, and that might be a big part of some of people's frustration and confusion. But when other people step up, I say, well, if you think you know what's going on, I'm happy to put you in charge and let you drive it. But then that creates other problems, right? Because, like, what if I don't agree with that? And it's like, okay, the way I look at it is I own the problem. Like, I think there's a big problem. I want to make a more resilient church. We have some principles and values that we've talked about being discipled by Jesus rather than human beings, and being decentralized and having good relationships. So, but what we lack justifiably is a form so people can say, oh, I see what we are doing, and I see where I fit in, and I see how this is going to actually solve that problem. And people are frustrated because they don't have that.
Well, no, I think, so I've been reflecting on this in general. And again, going back to what Mike and I worked on, you said you were the steward, and then other people wanted to take a try and drive the bus for a while, to use David's favorite traumatic triggering incident. And you said, but the problem is we might disagree. And Mike and I would say, no, that's what you live for, is those disagreements.
Yeah, I actually never meant that the problem was that we disagree. It's interesting that you heard that. That's not at all what I was saying.
Well, what did you say? You said something negative, but the problem is
right.
Someone else is in
and you heard
charge.
something very different than what I said. No. So
I heard a word starting with D, at least.
Maybe. So let me try again and see if you can hear me this time.
Well, I wish Zoom had quick swipe back and replay.
Yeah, I know that. That is an excellent idea.
I have a list 10 miles long of Zoom improvements at this point, buddy. After living here.
Zaps will save civilization. We'll find out. What I said was that I think what people are frustrated by is they want to know what the form is, where they fit in.
Oh, I heard that. The part before that. Go back another 1 minute.
Is that people try things. The problem is if when one person drives, then the other people feel like, well, like when I said Ted was going to do his talk, you seem very disgruntled by the fact that this is just going to turn into another version of New Canaan Society.
Or actually, I have to refine that. Passion talks.
Or passion talks, right? Yeah. Okay, but fine. So, like I said, that was my point, is that if I say let person A drive, then person B says, well, where do my interests fit in? And that's where you need some form, right? To say that, yes, there is a context which ensures that the things that are most important to you will be.
I agree. I agree with this, but I'm just playing psychoanalyst. You had a Freudian slip there where you said, and I'll go back and listen to it and send it to you. But it was like the problem before the form thing. You said, okay, so
if we just let one person be in charge, then other people might feel like their issues are being given short shrift.
Yeah, and
you clearly felt that.
No, I think that's when you're starting to engage, when the differences are nicely expressed, not through shouting, screaming, hijacking the Zoom session, but it's like, I see it differently. And then that's
Okay.
when the good stuff happens.
Okay, so but I think that's actually the point, though, is that, and if that's what you intended to communicate, I apologize for not picking up on that. It was not obvious to me. You weren't, I did not get from you like, oh, someone's expressing a contrary point of view. This is great. I get to articulate the opposite to ensure that we move forward. I thought you were just upset that your point of view was not being honored.
I'm not going to claim unuseful emotions were not in play, but I mean, this is new. This is new to me, right? Mike and I, we kind of discovered this 3 years ago. It's like, hey, not the whole point, because again, we don't want to say there's just one point, but there's awfully good stuff that should be worked on. Like Jesus is nonstop being confronted by Pharisees and all sorts of people. He doesn't say, hey, don't go away because I don't want to fight you. It's like, that's when you would perk up and say, teaching opportunity.
Yeah, so Bill, help me out here. So you're preaching the need to be engaged and with people who disagree with you, and we haven't seen you the last 2 weeks, and I assume that was because you did not want to be engaged. So is this something you're in process at, or did I just misread what you were?
Well, I think I texted you I didn't feel safe. I just didn't want to be one more. And it seemed to happen again on the last Zoom. So even when I'm not there, it's happening.
You just said you want a place where people are confronting and disagreeing. So I'm getting some cognitive disconnect here.
Yeah, but I don't think we know how to do that.
Okay.
There's a lot of steps here.
Okay, so what I'm hearing, let me repeat what I'm hearing you say to make sure I got this correct.
I don't want to get in a ring and be bloodied and maimed, right?
Okay, so help me. Let me repeat what I'm hearing you say. So on the one hand, you place a high value on confrontation and disagreement and people engaging around difficult things. But on the other hand, you also have an understandable concern about wanting to feel safe, not wanting to feel attacked, and wanting to know that people are going to disagree in a respectful and constructive way.
Yeah, and so what I'm doing, so to answer your question, what am I doing? I'm watching to see how 2 of the disagreements pan out. And I feel there's way more than 2.
Oh, there's way more. But what I'm hearing you say, though, is that you're doing the exact opposite of what you were just saying everyone should do. So let's reframe the statement to make. I want to, because that's why I'm feeling some cognitive dissonance.
No. Well, sure, but I mean, it's like.
But if we all wait until it gets safe, then no one's ever going to engage.
No, not just safe. It's like, in some sense, I'm letting people figure it out by themselves, or I'm trying to. I mean, it's going to be a lot of work to get this point across.
Right, and so like I said, Bill, help me out here, okay? Because I want us. So I think we can agree on this point. Then is that we want to have healthy, constructive engagement around our disagreements, right?
Who's we?
I think you and I want everyone we interact with to engage in constructive, healthy ways around their disagreements.
Yeah, so there's 2 of us on board with that vision.
I think everyone would agree with that.
No. Maybe if we brought it up. Yeah, maybe.
If we defined it that vaguely, yes. But what most people mean when they say that is that I wish other people would be really healthy and constructive, so it was easy for me to disagree with them.
It's a 2-way street.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, and so.
Well, no, but I'm not going to be that nasty. I think, sure.
Okay, I'm glad that you're not being that nasty. Some of the statements you made it sound like that. That you're going to wait until the rest of us get our act together before you're willing to talk to us. I don't think that's what you meant, but it sounded like that.
Well, that's why I said I think one approach might be taking is I want to see if people can figure it out by themselves without me coming in, and I'm just not a very persuasive person, right? I try to.
So Bill, here's the interesting thing. that I wonder gets back to this issue of lecturing that we talked about with the grief circles, right? Is that
I don't remember the grief circles, but
I mean,
continue.
the Blue Christmas,
Oh, yes. Okay.
right? Okay, that's what
I like your name better. I like your name better. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I have a friend who does something like that out of a funeral home, where he actually runs this grief thing for the holiday season for people who lost loved ones.
Right.
Really beautiful and powerful and effective in a lot of ways. That I don't think anybody wants you to come in and lecture us on how we should resolve conflict. And I agree that that probably would not go well, and trying to persuade us to adopt a certain model. What would be interesting in any context is for you to show us what you are learning about how you are working through this and growing in it.
Without lecture format.
Yeah, lecture, it was testimonial rather than lecture. Not saying, oh, you should do this, but I mean, this is what I try to do a lot, is to say, hey, I know there's this issue here. Here's where I have struggled with this and what I am learning. And
Yeah.
people can say, well, that's just you, and they say, and that's fine. Or then people have this is what I want Sunday mornings to be eventually, right? You don't have a preacher up front saying, this is the truth, and you're all supposed to believe it. You have people saying, hey, this is the problem we are struggling with as a community. Here's where I've experienced it and where Christ has shown up for me and where the body of Christ has come around me to help me do this better. And hopefully you will learn something or be inspired by it that you can figure out what to do. And then next week you come and share your story. Right? So from a position of, we always say this, but we hardly ever do it, right? One beggar is telling another beggar where they found bread.
Yeah. A couple comments is, yeah, I know people vastly prefer stories over, this is an ongoing debate in my other communities. Like, people don't want abstract theory, they want practical applications. And the Bible is filled with stories as opposed to theoretical presentations.
Yeah.
For some reason, I prefer the theory. I prefer just here's the theory, here's the model. And sometimes I get lost in the story. And I've been in church long enough to know that people really seem to get super lost with these stories. They come away with all sorts of weird ideas about Jesus or God or Christianity. And so I think let's just stick to this. There's not one thing to make things work. So a little bit of the theory, a little bit of the model, so people kind of know where I'm coming from. And it just seems a little bit scary to say, hey, here's a video of me throughout my day. Do you get it?
Well, no, I mean, I don't think, I'm not big into live streams.
No, not that, but what, define, tell a story.
Let me give you a preview of what I think is going to happen on Tuesday. I've been wrong so far, but this time I might be right. Is that when I was talking to Dave, and I'm still writing up the notes from our call on Wednesday, I realized that I was frustrated with Dave because I felt like he was not, so back in season 5, when he was jumping on you about things that he felt like you weren't saying, I felt that was contrary to the value I had for the group about being a safe place for people to come and share what they think. And so I made a judgment call to intervene and stop that line of questioning. And rightly or wrongly, I did that thinking that A, it was unfair to you, and B, it wasn't healthy for the tone of the group. What it didn't occur to me, which I realized during the call, was that also crushed David's spirit. Because I had sort of promised I was going to give him free rein. I went back on that promise. I ruined the experiment we were running. And he's been kind of disengaged in a lot of ways with the Great Reset since then. And I honestly don't know So I personally come into the groups the fact that, okay, I made a choice. I'm not sure, like in the context, it may have been the right thing to do, the way I perceive the group and the structures and the social contract there. But even if it was the right thing, it had a negative consequence in terms of David's relation to the group and my relation to him. And that is something that I need the group to help me work out. And there are things that David did that again, by definition, were contrary to my values that I think are wrong. But that is a secondary thing. For me, the primary thing is making sure that the area where I did wrong and I hurt someone and acted contrary to my values and what I think is best for the group, I need to bring that to someone and to the community to have them help me walk through this. And if I can do that, then I might be able to then deal with the speck in David's eye, if there is one. That might then actually address the concerns you have about making the group safer, in that we have, in the context of working through my issue, we can then articulate, well, what do we want the norms to be? What is appropriate and inappropriate? If people transgress, what do we want them to do? And at that point, having you to weigh in and say, oh, I felt this. If people did X, that would make me feel safer. That would be a more viscerally meaningful way to have the conversation than an abstract discussion about group norms without talking about any of the actual problems we've had. That was kind of my point.
Okay, so my feedback is, my goal is not a safer space, despite appearances.
That's not your ultimate goal. That is a goal.
Maybe, but the reason I bring that up is because I know it's certainly not David's goal. He has a very different goal. He wants authenticity to the extreme, even if people start crying.
Right, and authenticity, would he use that word, authenticity?
No, I'm trying to remember what word he used. It's like, you have a problem. If you have a problem,
he doesn't want people to have secrets. I know that that's a big issue.
Well, no, if you have a problem, just don't sit on it for months. Say, I disagree with Ernie about the following issue, and don't let it build and build. And, yeah.
Right, but so
straightforwardness.
Sorry.
Just, yeah.
So okay, why did you bring that up? You said that wasn't. Did you say that wasn't your goal? That wasn't David's goal. I got confused there. Why you were?
I'm not arguing for TGR. We need to figure out how to make TGR a safer space, and I think so. Now, I mean, this is obviously a complex thing. So, a couple things. I feel there's been at least 4, if not 5, pretty serious disagreements with me of varying degrees of difficulty. Let's just pretend it's the most recent one. I've lost track at this point. That one is too big for this group. And it's because it goes through years, involves many other people outside the group. And it's gonna be too hard to explain to everybody the background, the context. So what I'm proposing is this disagreement would be the great thing for us to work through in TGR. The Ernie, David disagreement would be something I think we all understand better than some of the issues I've been involved in. And it's pertinent, relevant. Whereas these other disagreements, it's like, I think all you can do with it is, yeah, show how Christians work through disagreements and forgive each other, and yay Jesus, that one, I'm just not too excited about that project.
Right. So I feel like I'm still getting some context.
Because I don't.
You're trying to say.
What? Because
I feel like I feel like you're trying to say something, and I'm not quite getting it because I'm hearing 2 different things. And
well, I would like to have us talk about the value of disagreements and what you do with it. And it seems like the TGR approach so far has been go away for 4 weeks and come back and apologize. And I'm not sure if it's conflicting goals. The goal is to show, hey, we can love our enemies, we can extend grace, all that sort of stuff, and that's an okay goal, right?
I'm still confused here because I feel like I'm not sure if we're agreeing or disagreeing. What behavior are you trying to model about how to deal with these issues? Or are you waiting for us to figure it out?
Well, I like the disagreement that you're having with David. I'd like to work on that one because I think it's very pertinent to the group. Or it could be the disagreement that David had with me that one specific day, which everyone saw from start to finish. It's much harder to bring something from outside in and have people understand and track.
Okay, so
I mean, you realize the incident for me was a 2-hour, super intense, traumatic experience. And I've heard people try and summarize that in 3, 4, 5 minutes, or even, I guess, the first time in a minute and a half. That I can't do that, and that's not the right approach. Obviously, there's massive selective sharing going on right there.
right, and so.
But everyone saw the David Bill interchange. It's recorded on video, unlike the incident, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
sorry.
Yeah.
The incident Janet referred to as opposed to the original
Right.
incident with Steve. So many incidents. You gotta start numbering these things.
Yeah.
Right. So the and my laptop's gonna die in a few minutes, which is probably a good sign that I need to move on with my life.
So just choose one: the David Ernie disagreement or the
right,
Bill.
so I'm choosing the Ernie one because it's my issue that I am.
Yeah,
I mean,
and I would support that 100%.
Would you actually be there for it?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So we found.
But you would have to guarantee it would stay there and not switch over to Bill.
This is the thing I was trying to get you to articulate for me, which I had great difficulty doing. So let me ask it again on camera. Is that what do you need from us for you to feel safe to attend?
That someone's not going to say, hey, I know we have this agenda. I know some people may have prepared for it, but I'm just going to take it in a different direction to work through some traumatic thing from the past.
Especially one targeting you.
Well, I don't want to say targeting, but yeah.
I mean, okay, so the good news is that we are going to start with the traumatic issue between me and David. So hopefully we will not be surprised by a traumatic issue, because it's kind of hard when someone has a deep emotional issue. It's hard to say we just need to study the Bible. But if we're saying, damn it, I'm the one who's screwing up here, we're gonna deal with my pain first, I think people will be more willing to give me grace for that. So that's a good thing. The second thing is, if I'm the one, if David and I are the ones that are sort of on trial, if you will, or working through the issue, and then someone does something irrelevant, it's hard for us to be the ones to say, hey, sorry, that's off topic, we're gonna focus on this. And someone needs to make those calls.
I guess we need a role. We need like Ted the enforcer.
So if you're okay with Ted being the enforcer and you're comfortable with Ted understands your concern and we'll keep it on that, then that would be great. If not, we could find someone else that you would.
But I mean, actually, I'm not a big fan of enforcers, right?
I know, but then you complain about the lack of it.
No, here's the alternative, right?
Okay.
See, that's kind of the reason I left church. Is church was very much this model of an enforcer, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'll just watch you, and we do something wrong, then the church springs to life.
Okay.
What's a better approach than that? Telling people ahead of time what's going on. And I think that was not done on many of these sessions. People had no clue what David meant by happy hour. No clue whatsoever. And it's evident.
I don't think that was a cognitive issue of information communication, Bill. That was not. And here, right? Yeah. So, like, let's be more precise. Last week, the point is that even if it's true that it's a cognitive thing, in my experience running groups,
right,
no matter how much you explain to people, people will either A, misunderstand, or B, not care. Right? And so when that happens, what you can don't give me the answer. If we just explained it carefully enough the first time, we wouldn't have problems. I can agree we can try and explain it more ahead of time. But in the however unlikely chance that someone either doesn't understand or doesn't care, what do you think should happen?
Okay. David has this good technique. He says, that's important, that's relevant, but just pause it for now and we'll come back to it.
Okay, who would say that?
The person who feels that they don't want to talk about that right now.
Okay,
Typically.
so for example,
Mhm.
if the incident between you and David that happened on camera,
Right.
it sounds like I should have said nothing. And if you felt uncomfortable, I should trust that you would have said, that sounds interesting. I don't think we should talk about it right now.
What do you mean if it happened on camera? It was on camera.
Right, but it happened on camera. You didn't say anything, I intervened.
Right.
Because I was worried that you weren't feeling safe. That was my concern at the time. I didn't really ask you about that, which may have been one of my errors.
Well, okay, the reason I didn't say pause that is I didn't expect it to go on for 50 minutes. I thought it would be like a 30-second issue.
Right. But so what I'm hearing you say, though, which is the opposite of what I thought I heard you say, is that if someone gets out of line, that you or whoever feels attacked or pressured, that you can just say, that's interesting. Whenever you feel uncomfortable, you would just say that, and no one else has to take responsibility for that. Is that what you're saying now?
No, it would be a group norm that someone can say, relevant point, but pause it for now.
Right. So the question is that but does anyone have to say that? But you said you don't want to be a place where you would get jumped on.
Yeah. That person
But
who's
what if
not
nobody
ready.
else, if nobody else said it,
Right.
would you feel safe saying that? And is that enough?
If it's a group norm, and that wouldn't launch an additional attack. It's like, no, the most important thing is to be authentic, say what you're feeling. I'm gonna
okay.
drive it until I get you to squeal.
So okay. So what I'm hearing you say then is that at the beginning of the session, maybe during Ted's intro or whatever, we say, by the way,
Right.
we want to establish a norm that at any time,
Right.
if anyone asks you something you're uncomfortable with, you can say pass, or I'm not ready to discuss that right now, and we need to respect that.
Yeah, it's not dismissing it, which would be frustrating.
Yeah.
It's saying, hey, this is a major context switch that I'm not able to deal with.
Right. And when there's a gray area, but I think I guess that's actually not a bad one. Just like we have a rule that anyone who's on a video can say, I wasn't comfortable with that, I want to take it down. That was kind of, we have a policy that you can't force anyone to answer a question. Now, making that statement, it is entirely possible that that would trigger David, if that feels like that's directed against him or trespassing one of his values. Maybe it'd be worthwhile to discuss that with Ted and David ahead of time.
Right, I agree.
In terms of like, what would make you feel comfortable being in the group is to acknowledge that norm.
I mean, this was years and years of interaction with David for us to develop this principle, to appreciate it and understand where it's coming from. So to just drop it out of the blue and say, hey, here's this new thing, please abide, it's not going to work.
Right.
So yeah, it needs to be discussed. Yeah.
Okay. So, but the short answer is that if we could agree on that norm and a phrasing and share that at the beginning of the meeting, you would feel comfortable participating.
Yeah. I mean,
in absent that you are concerned.
Yeah. I mean, it is an important discussion because it could sound to people like avoidance or, hey, I really care about this, but I'm being shut off. I mean, people have to understand the full implications of the whole process associated with that. It's not just shut up, stop talking now. No, there's like, it's the process is going to go in different ways, but it's a valid issue. We're just not going to suddenly jump from one topic to another topic.
Right.
But
this is the challenge is that there's two things there actually. There's a question whether a person feels uncomfortable dealing with it right now, which is I think a thing a person has to have autonomy over. Otherwise, they're always welcome to just jump out of the room if they feel that's really unsafe. And the second is whether the group feels it's a relevant topic to discuss that's sufficiently urgent. And so even having a protocol like last week when
you voted, yeah, for the first time. Live.
The time that you didn't show up, the first time we voted. Ted did that thing with a vote to say whether or not he was going to share his
I thought it
passion.
happened last week as well.
That was 2 weeks ago, which
Okay.
the one you didn't watch. Ted voted, and this one, technically, it was actually Janet was sharing. Is there anything going on that makes it hard for you to participate in the study? And she shared that she had this issue with Emiliana, and David and I had a back channel conversation, which is in the public chat. Like, do we need to moderate this? No, let's just wait and see what happens, right? And Emiliana responded very graciously. I think if she had reacted otherwise, it may have been appropriate for one of us to step in and say, hey, I don't know if she's comfortable with this and we need to do it. So there's always going to be gray areas. And I think it's useful having somebody accountable for figuring out what went wrong to do better next time when it doesn't work well, which is kind of what we're doing now. Is that, there was a norm that some of us thought were implicit, but clearly not everyone agreed to, and now we need to make it explicit. And I know more than I did last time. I think we have a point of discussion that I can bring to Ted and David, and we have all the context of how we got here.
Yeah, and I mentioned it because David understands the principle.
Mm-hmm.
There's a high chance of being accepted by David. Yeah, the pause technique. Yeah.
So, but at least we know what it would take for you to feel comfortable going back to the group. And, if we're not there yet, that's fine. That gives us something to aspire towards. And a bright line of achievement. And if nothing else, then he and I work on our own issues and we get wiser. We can move toward it next time.
Yeah, and just to be David-like, say what's on my mind is, as an aside, the way to not get Bill back to the group is to say, hey, let's suddenly decide to do Bill's favorite topic the week after a very traumatic incident. Just for future reference. Right.
You were the one who suggested it. So that's why I tried to go with it. Like I said, I don't know what to do. I asked you, you didn't know either. And, if I'd known that you didn't know, if you had just said, I need a couple weeks off to process, then that would have been less ambiguous. But, we all tried, and then we learned things different than what we said, and that's fine. That's part of the process we're working through.
So, and then one more thing off my chest. So I'm not sure, I have to go back and listen to see if I suggested that or condition it's like, if we do this topic I've been waiting to do, or struggling with for 9 months, I'll show up. I'm not sure.
No, so it's in the group, it's in the chat between you and me. You can look at it. The way I remember this, I said, hey, okay, I understand you said, what do you want us to, what do you think we need to do? And you said, well, I just want us to be like this. And I said, the only thing I think was DBS. You said, yeah, DBS would work. And then and my impression, and I shared it at the time, my impression was, and I said, what passage? You said, well, Romans 15:14 is always good. And so my impression, it wasn't an explicit statement, was that if we were doing something like that, that you would feel comfortable with it. And then as you thought about it more and felt more, you felt less comfortable. That was what I interpreted your reaction as.
Right.
And like I said, what I kept asking you was, what would you need to feel safe there? And maybe then, so anyway, if I misinterpreted what you intended, I apologize. But that
no, you didn't misinterpret. I guess it didn't make it clear when I would feel comfortable doing that.
That was.
So you understand, right? Like if someone gets beat up, you could say, "Oh, sorry, let's do what you're really wanting to do."
I didn't even ask you if that was what you wanted to do in general. I was asking, what do you want us to do? So now actually I feel like I'm going to answer the question I really wanted to ask back then. What do we need to do for you to feel safe to come back? And I think the short answer is establish a group norm and demonstrate our ability to stick to it.
Yeah. And again, if you can just think some more about, put more thought, not into the enforcing, but the
education.
Yeah, understanding, right? So, what doesn't work is here's 10 rules. And if you break some of the rules, you go to hell, right? That's been proven not to work, right?
Right, yeah, and no one, so what I'm proposing in the 30 seconds before my laptop shuts off is that David and I have a conversation about this norm, trying to understand why it matters and like, what does that mean in practice for how we deal with it? And it's it's not to say that we're going to be perfect. It's to say this is a norm that we aspire towards.
Yeah.
For people not to feel pressure to discuss things they're comfortable with, and then
or not ready, or whatever. Yeah.
whatever. Right. Well, yeah, not comfortable with. Right. Is to say that because this is a live on camera thing, we have certain norms, and that we're gonna touch people's buttons, and someone's gonna feel like, well, you cut that off too soon or too long. It's like, okay. This is where we have to say that, like, Ted and David and I have the responsibility to make sure that we learn how to do this better.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by accountability.
Yeah. Just don't couch it too much emotional negativity. It could be just like, hey, I'm just not prepared to talk about this, and I'm feeling super happy, right?
Right. And I think there's just like we say, if there's anything that's said on camera that's, you're not comfortable with, let me know, we'll take it out. If there's something that's asked on camera that you're not comfortable answering, just let us know, and we will, revert it. I think that's a good norm to have, and I think there might be a way to phrase that Ted and David are comfortable with. And if there is, I'll let you know. And if we can't agree, but before Tuesday, I'll let you know.
And just quick, I think this is a good principle when it's just David and I talking. I think it's a crucial principle when it's 9 people that make a huge effort to show up, give an hour of their week. I think it's even more important.
Yeah, I think there's a second thing, which is that tertiary one, which is that even if everyone's comfortable, the principal's comfortable, someone say, I don't know if this is the right thing for us to be discussing now, which is where Ted calling a question and asking for a vote seems like a reasonable way to resolve that.
Yeah, we can try that.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks, Ernie.
Thank you, Bill. God
Have
bless
a great
you.
weekend.
Hope to be able to see you on Tuesday.
All right.
Bye.
Talk to those guys. Bye-bye.
Well, bye.